All right. Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to this monthly game research seminar that we are hosting at Stockholm University at the Department of Computer and System Sciences. I'm Associate Professor Miriam Palosari Eladhari, and it's my honor to introduce Dr. Hailey Austin, who's visiting us from Abertay University to do field studies on the Swedish games industry. So good to have you here and welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, so thank you to everyone joining us today. As Miriam said, I'm Dr. Hailey Austin, and I'm a researcher in the creative industries. So let me just make sure, yeah, that's switched, fine. So yes, I got my PhD in comic books from the University of Dundee, which is what brought me to Scotland. But perhaps, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not Scottish. I'm American. So after getting my PhD at Dundee Uni, I am now work at Abertay Uni on the InGAME International project, which is about bringing together the creative industries between the UK and China, is my side of the project. That has been difficult during the pandemic, but yeah, so it's about the transnational relationship between the creative industries and what we can do to kind of bridge different gaps. And as you can see from this picture, I love horses and Star Stable. So it was kind of a dream getting to come here to Star Stable. So the funding, oh, I didn't realize that was on there. Let me see if I can lower that. There we go, that's better. So the reason I was able to come here was because of funding through the Saltire Emerging Researcher Scheme. So that was funded by the Scottish Funding Council, the Scottish government. And for me, through the creative industries, it was through the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities, SGSAH, lots of fun acronyms and mouthfuls. But essentially it was to promote industry relationships and academic relationships between Scotland, Scottish researchers, and different places in Europe. So I like to call it the Please Take Us Back funding. So there were 10 of us that were selected to go to different places, quite a few in Sweden. Yeah, so very, very happy that I got this opportunity. So yes, I came here to do research on Stockholm's creative industries. So for me, that includes video games, comic books, and board games. The aim or the method of my research was to do qualitative interviews with people in Stockholm, and then that kind of branched out to Sweden as a whole about their experiences in the creative industries and what they believe makes the creative industries here unique. I also have done some desk research on Stockholm's creative industries, but it's mostly been video games that there's a lot of data on. So kind of bringing my own data in for comic books, fanzines, and board games. So it's been a lot of interviews and a lot of fun. I look forward to coding them when I get home. So, and the outputs from this trip and from this research, dual language report on Stockholm's creative industries. So as I said, including video games, board games, and comics that Miriam will help me with, and I'm very thankful. As well as I'll be making a travelogue comic or zine detailing my research and my experience here. So I'm mostly a comics writer, but a comics creator as well. And I do a lot of creative output, creative research. So that was part of my PhD. There were comics, posters, zines as research. So continuing that trend with comics, in case you haven't noticed, that's kind of a theme. So the research so far, what have I been doing since I've been here? I've done 22 interviews, which has been amazing. Mostly with people who work in video games. The second biggest is comics. Then board games is probably the smallest, but a lot of people have talked about board games. And then people kind of in the creative industries as a whole. So that includes funding bodies and freelancers who kind of work all around the creative industries as a whole. So yeah, it's been really good. And I'm happy to say, as of yesterday, I reached saturation in my data. So yay. So it's been really good. Some of the big people that I've talked to, biggest would be Star Stable. I interviewed 4 people at Star Stable, including 2 women in higher up positions. And then 2 other people kind of associated with more of the transmedia, so the comics, books, and other outputs at Star Stable. So I went from everywhere from these huge international studios to a one-woman studio at Valiant Games. Imagilabs, which is a tech company that has an app that is teaching girls and young women how to code Python, which is amazing. And then I talked to quite a few people who used to work at Paradox. So big range on studio size, who I was talking to, whether it was the co-founder, a leader, or someone on an art team. So that's been really good. I've also talked with Ion Game Design, located here in Stockholm, quite with 2 women there as well. One is the CEO and one is an artist, as well as people in the creative industries, mostly freelancers, including a woman named Amanda who works at Typey Type, and she does all kinds of different creative industries. And shout out to Amanda, she's the reason I learned about Star Stable in the first place, and kind of drove my coming here. So what else have I done? I've taken in the local culture. So for me, most importantly, it was, if I'm here researching kind of horse games and all that kind of stuff, I'm gonna have to go ride horses, I think. Yep, so I did. Rode a little Icelandic horse named Prinsessa, and it was very fun. I've also been going to lots of museums. So I went to the Aubergs Museum, which hosts one of the 4th largest Disney toy collection, but he's also got all kinds of incredible original art from comics and other things like that. So that was amazing. Got to talk with quite a few people there. And then I also went to the Technical Museum to their Play Beyond Play exhibit, which talked a lot about the Swedish games history, as well as the impact in what we're seeing today. Number one being that it's the largest Swedish export, which is amazing. I've also gone several times to the Culture House, which is amazing. I feel like a kid in a candy store every time I go. What a wonderful cultural hub to have, with so many comics and games and everything in one place in the city center. I also play tested some games at Ion Games. This is Bessima, who is the CEO of Ion Games, and we were play testing her new game, Samu Ramat, which is all about, it's a historical game with really strong female characters. And so we were play testing it before it comes out soon. So I got the opportunity to do that, which was amazing. And I went to the Vasa Museum. And this kind of, to me, is a snapshot of what I've learned about Stockholm's creative industries, is that they are everywhere. They are deeply entrenched. So you go to this museum with this beautiful giant ship that's over 300 years old. And there are interactive games to play for kids in the museum and adults in the museum. There are exhibits about the games they used to play in the 1600s. And there are comics using Bamse, who's a very, as some of you may know, famous Swedish character on the Vasa. So they have a comic book in the shop with him there. So they're very ingrained, entwined in a lot of what is here, even though people may not realize it. The comics and games and everything like that is deeply embedded, from what I can see, in Stockholm and Sweden's culture. The creative industries are a really big part of it. So some initial findings. I'm still, going through my research. This has just been 1 month of being here, and I'll have another month or so to get everything figured out, analyzed. That's the right word. So initial findings. As I said, comics and fanzines are a huge part of the culture. So even people who are learning Swedish here, they are reading comics in order to learn Swedish, which is amazing. We don't get that as much in the US from what I know. Fanzines here are also so nice. They're so well polished compared to the ones I'm used to in the UK. It's hard to find a really gritty, cheap looking one. They're all beautiful and very well done. Same with the comics. There's a certain polish that I've noticed. Comics here have a huge feminist movement that kind of started in the 70s, 80s, and has pushed its way through, but it's still, I've noticed there's a lot of women in comics here, which is really interesting. And people do have studios here, but they're not really centered in Stockholm. They're kind of spread around Sweden. So those are my initial findings when it comes to comics and fanzines. Video games, thriving export, the #1 export for the last couple of years in Sweden, which is amazing. There are lots of women in video games, so much more than we have in the UK. In the UK, we have what's called the leaky pipeline, where a woman reaches the age of 30 and she's no longer in the industry for various reasons. Here, we not only have lots of women in games, but also women in leadership, which is really important. And like I said, something different, not what I'm used to seeing in the UK. Video game companies tend to have a good work-life balance, or at least to promote one. And they do a really good job of attracting diverse talent. So not only gender-wise, but ethnicity and background. There tends to be even spoken language, a lot of diversity in Stockholm's video games. However, the one negative thing that I've noted is that while Stockholm does a really good job of attracting talent, they have a really hard time retaining that talent. So we find that in the UK when it comes to women in jobs, but it seems to be that in Sweden, it's foreign employees. They're very good at attracting them, but foreign employees only stay in Sweden or Stockholm on average for 21 months before going elsewhere or returning. This is an initial finding. I do not have, a reason. I think part of it is going to be visa, part of it's going to be culture, language, perhaps, other opportunities, perhaps. But this is, like I said, part of my initial findings. And finally, one of my big research questions: why are there so many women here compared to in the UK? So these are my initial findings. In Sweden, you have maternity and paternity leave, and they're equal. In the UK, not so much. Most companies make a conscious effort to employ and promote women to leadership positions. Most of the companies I talked about that they push for this specifically. It's not something that happens by accident. And something that I found here, as well as in the UK, women are more likely to join a company if women are already there. So it seems like an easy answer, but it's like, how do we get more women in the industry? And the answer is already have them there. Another reason is work-life balance. A lot of women here have noted a complete difference in work-life balance from the UK or other countries versus working in the creative industries here. And finally, the culture surrounding a lot of things, including paternity leave as a normal thing, whereas in the UK, it's still quite stigmatized. A culture normalizing women in leadership positions, and a lot of these other things. The office culture, promoting a work-life balance. Lots of these things come into play for why women are able to be in these positions. So I think that brings us to the end. All I can say is thank you. Here's my email address if you're interested in hearing about any more of this. Ooh, you can't see that very well, but this is my Twitter as well. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. So questions from the
audience.
yeah, from the audience who's actually here in person.
Occasion.
First, apologies for running out. I have got my phone in the lecture room downstairs. But yeah, I was curious that you said there's diverse talent and gender-wise and also ethnical perspective. Have you any data about disabled people in that?
No, I haven't gotten any data on disabled people in the workplace. It's been mostly diversity, inclusion when it comes to race and gender. But yeah, so I haven't looked into that, but that would be a really interesting thing. Yeah, definitely to look at.
I found the retainment issue, the 21 months in average, the retainment issue interesting. And I mean, you probably come across it, but that's something that's quite discussed also in, I don't know what I'm going to call it, non-creative industries.
Other
growth
industries.
industries growth industries on a more general perspective. But that's been discussed and in particular for the city of Stockholm, one reason being the housing market being so horrible. So that's, I would speculate that could be one variable in the set of variables.
Definitely.
So just reflecting that's also an issue in non-creative, I mean, growth industries in general. Yeah, definitely. What that why it is so and what it leads to.
From just a few of the interviews I've done, it seems to be that sometimes in order to attract foreign talent, they will do subsidized housing for a year. So that helps in the initial getting here, but afterwards, when it's kind of up to you to get, it seems like that seems to be a stumbling block. It's really hard to get housing. Yeah.
Do you see, you mentioned you did interviews also outside of Stockholm?
Yes.
And do you see the same phenomenon in the rest of the country?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's bigger in Stockholm. More people are drawn here as the big city. But yeah, it seemed to be elsewhere as well. They have a difficult time with retention. Yeah, not as much attraction, as I said.
So I have a question for you, Hailey. It's wonderful that you reached saturation yesterday.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, how did that manifest for you when you were sitting at your desk?
Oh, it was great. It was actually during an interview I did yesterday at the Culture House. And I was asking the questions, and it was a woman from Ecuador who works here. And she was just saying, she still had very interesting things to say, but I realized it was all within the same veins of kind of the general shape it's taken. And so I was just sitting there going, yes, was essentially the manifestation, taking the notes and going, good, yes, I've got an idea. It's all coming together. So yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see how much you have been able to accomplish during these weeks. So many interviews and so much input from various sources. It's really interesting, and also to get this perspective, because I mean we walk around here every day, and this observation that you have at the Vasa Museum about how deeply intertwined entertainment media is like, that's kind of like you take it for granted when you are in it.
Exactly.
But it's really,
it seems it's the same when I ask people, oh, do you read comics? They're like, not really. I read a lot as a kid, and they name off, Donald Duck, Bamsa, all these, like tons of them. And I'm like, so you did read? So yes, you did. They're like, yeah, but not more than anybody else. And I'm like, that's still a lot. I didn't read one until I was like 20.
Have you been to Scenkonstmuseet?
No.
No, what's the English name? Scenkonstmuseet.
Oh, I don't know. I have to Google it.
Is that the comics and toys one?
No, this is something else.
Okay.
I don't think I
Performing
have
Arts
been there.
Museum.
Performing Arts.
Performing Arts
Oh,
Museum
no, I've not.
on Sibyllegatan too. No, it's a relatively new one. And just the reason I'm mentioning it is when I was there last time, a couple of years, I reflected that the interactiveness and playfulness in the museum displays had been taken quite far. It used to be the music museum, but now it's the general performing arts museum.
All right.
They actually have a theremin, or they had when I was there last time.
They had a what?
Theremin.
It's an instrument that sounds like a ghost.
That thing.
The Russian 1920s.
Oh yes, that you hear in all the horror movies. Oh yes. You should have a secret one in the wardrobe and start playing it like when you have guests.
You wouldn't have guests for very long.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's true. I guess it depends on the visitor whether you go into the wardrobe and play or.
It'd be a good way to get people to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're the ones, I think, ones I've seen are taking this playfulness, interactiveness in museum displays pretty far.
Yeah. It's something that the UK is trying to do more of. So I was kind of keeping an eye out while I was here. But yeah, the Vasa Museum I was just like, bing, bing, bing. Come on. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I'm seeing another museum that's a very nice exhibition right now about Vikings. It's the biggest exhibition in the world of Vikings at the History Museum.
Right.
Near the World. So that's I can recommend as well. It's free entrance as well.
Oh, amazing.
Big exhibition.
That sounds really good.
I'm also curious about all these contacts you made with the game industry and or to get into the interviews.
Yes.
How did you achieve that? Because it can be a kind of challenge as well to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
The short answer is I'm very good at bugging people. The long answer is I hadn't set up any interviews before I came here, but I contacted people through the Women in Games Discord, which is kind of how I heard about Star Stables, and I made a few connections there. I did a search function in where you can introduce yourself, and I just looked for people that said Stockholm or Sweden, and then I messaged them and just said, hey, I'm going to be there for a little bit. Would you be interested in talking to me when I'm here, essentially? And a lot of people said yes, which was amazing. Then I got here and I had contacted some people at Star Stable, but Miriam had a contact in Star Stable who got me in contact with the Jane and Stacy, who are higher up women there, which was amazing. And then I just kind of went through and looked where I could find people, looked up all different kinds of studios. It was essentially all cold emails, but a lot of people responded really positively. And the really cool ones have been the comics artists. So I used the, I don't remember what it is in Swedish, essentially Illustrator search engine. Yes. And they have an entire comics section of it, which I thought was amazing. And I emailed people there and was just kind of annoying and said, I love comics. Can I come see your studio? and they said yes. And it's been amazing to see all of their work and everything. So that part has been really cool. And using Discord as well is how I found out about Ion game design, because one of the women on there is a artist there, and she's like, oh, I hope it's okay that I work in a board game place. And I was like, yes, I hadn't even thought of including that, but so now it's part of the research. So yeah, that's the long-winded answer, but mostly I'm annoying and persistent.
I may also add something
You may.
to that. You're also very personable.
Oh, thank you.
So that the emails that you send to people they're easy to process, they're nice, they give a good feeling to them. Yes.
Yes, I try to be genuine and yeah, be like, I know this is weird, but I researched this. I'd love to talk to you if you have time. I also know you're busy, and and some people did say, I Googled you to make sure you were real. And I was like, yeah, smart.
Oh,
don't invite someone you don't know to like your
that does make sense.
studio. Yeah, no, so.
Oh, in the chat here,
Oh, yes.
there is another museum tip. When it comes to museums, the Museum of Illusions is a good one.
Ooh.
It's made by Paradox. They have spots all across the world, just not in Stockholm right now. And there's a link here, museumofillusions.com.
Amazing.
Yes.
I also heard that, I think there's one game studio here in Stockholm that outside of the studio, there's like an interactive, you can play a game essentially on the wall outside the studio. I'm not sure which one it is. I'll have to ask or check my notes again. But yeah, so there's even that kind of stuff here as well. But that sounds really cool. I didn't know about that.
Okay, I think I will stop the recording part now. But before I do that, just a warm thank you, Dr. Hailey Austin, for being here and spreading some light over our games industry.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I'll stop the recording. Bye-bye.
No questions online?
I have checked.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for presentation.